to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Welcome to A Well-Designed Business. It's Power Talk Friday, and we have another fantastic show for you today. Jude Charles is back. Yes, the video storytelling master returns. You've heard him on episodes 516, 626, and 718. And if you haven't heard them, I highly suggest you go back and listen to those episodes. And before we get to this episode, I want to tell you about Inside Voice, Outside Voice. That's right. It's happening this Thursday, December 2nd, 2021. That's just a couple of days if you're listening in real time. Wrap it up and put a bow on it. 2022 is just around the corner. Are you ready to pack away all those great things you did in your business this year and start unpacking all your big plans for 2022? Well, let's talk about all those things that you can do to wrap up loose ends this year and get ready for an amazing 2022. This will take place on Zoom, eyeball to eyeball, me and you in real time, getting to ask questions, sharing ideas, and generally just supporting each other, right? And this month we are supporting Pay Away the Layaway. Don't you love that? So, you know, Inside Voice, Outside Voice, half of all proceeds are donated every month to a charity. And Pay Away the Layaway is this month's charity. I have to say, I remember my aunt and my mom laying away Christmas items when I was little, right? How many people are out there saving for weeks and months to give their kids and their family the presents that they want to give them? Just like my mom and my aunt did. Well, Pay Away the Layaway surprises families by paying off their layaways. Can you imagine? I just picture my mom or my Aunt Judy finding out that their layaway was paid in full. Holy cow, they would have been dancing in the streets. So join me this Thursday, December 2nd. Let's chat. Let's figure out your big, bodacious goals for 2022, and let's help this organization pay away the layaway for some deserving families. Go to InsideVoiceOutsideVoice.com to learn more and register now. And of course, the link is in the show notes. So back to my friend Jude Charles. We've covered why creating a brand story matters, and we went deep into how to bring your story to life and how to pull it all together with video. Today, we're talking tactics for putting your storytelling videos to work for you so that you can turn these marketing assets into a profitable lead gen and sales machine for you. As Jude calls it, dramatic demonstration. Let's get to it and let's learn how to turn video into profit. Hi, Jude. Thanks so much for joining me again on A Well-Designed Business today.
Thank you for having me, LuAnn. Part 4 of dramatic demonstration of proof. We've been talking a lot about storytelling and specifically video storytelling, but I'm excited to be back.
Me too. And so I'm glad that you just alluded to it. So because what I was going to say is, yay, this is like the fourth in the series where we've learned all the things, and we're going to talk about today about how to leverage all the things so that we can make some profit in our business. So before we dig in to dramatic leverage, recap for us the things quickly that we've done in the other episodes, because of course in the show notes are all of those episodes, and everyone is really, if you've missed any, you're gonna have to go back and pick them up because each one has so much value in it. But give us a recap, Jude.
Sure. I'll give a real quick recap. So in episode 1, we talked a lot about storytelling. we talked about what it takes to tell a story, why it's important to tell a story. And then in episode 2, I actually brought that to life by digging deeper into LuAnn's story, her story of starting the podcast, her story of her big why. So the day that Mary Fran emailed her, the day that she was also like thinking about what would be read in her obituary about her story. And then in episode 3, we talked about the video element of it. How do you create this dramatic demonstration? Episode 2 was dramatic clarity, so getting really clear about your why, getting really clear about your core values and what you stand for. But episode 3 was like, okay, once you've gotten clear on your why and your core values, how do you bring that to life in video form? And then today, what we're talking about is dramatic leverage. So again, we got really clear on our brand and our story, our why. We brought it to life in video, but if no one gets to see it, then it really doesn't mean anything. And so this is the full picture. This is the entire roadmap. We've gone on this journey, and this is where we're landing at the end of the roadmap, where we make sure that you leverage the video content that you created, the stories that you've created, you start to leverage it.
And so I love this because so often, we get parts of things. We don't get the A through Z, the entire roadmap from point A to point B. And I'm very anxious to understand. I think you teased it in the last episode and said, while we wouldn't list it all today, but you literally have identified 71 different ways that someone could leverage the video content that they create for their business. Do I remember that correctly?
That is correct. 70 different ways.
70.
We won't go over all of them today, but after doing this for 15 years, and I'll actually give the backstory as to how I came up with the 70 different ways in a second. But after doing this for 15 years, what you realize is that, or what I've realized over the years, is that clients would get really happy in telling their story and creating a video, but then they just let it sit there, right? Like they wouldn't, or they would upload it to YouTube and they're like, hey, people, check this out. And then that's it. But nothing happens after that. And that's why I came up with the 70 different ways, because I realized it wasn't so much that people didn't want to share it. They just didn't know how to. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're going to dig into today. I don't know how many we'll talk about today, but I'll just go over, we'll pick up where we left off. So I talked about the 3-part series that it's possible to do for your show, like if you're looking to promote the podcast, and we'll just pick up from there.
Oh, okay. Well, I told you, in the other episode, oh, darn, using me as a guinea pig.
Yeah.
That first episode, that's actually the second episode, but the episode when you did dramatic clarity, using me as a guinea pig was, a little bit I was like, okay, because I wasn't ready. You didn't tell me, and I had no idea what you were going to ask me. But then the other episode, you're like, now I'm going to take you what your videos will look like, and now you're going to tell me how to leverage it. I'm all about it.
Yeah. So really quick, before I go into that, I'll talk about the early impetus of all of this. So in episode 1, I talked about Keyshia Ka'oir, who she was the very first docuseries that I had ever created. She was creating a lipstick brand from the ground up. So it was think colored lipstick like blue, purple, green. And we filmed a documentary series of her building this company from day one. She wasn't sure if it was going to be something that would be popular. She wasn't sure if it was something that was going to grow into, something big. We filmed for 6 months, put out the documentary. She launched the business with the documentary, part 1 of the documentary series. And I'll never forget the day that I woke up at 7 o'clock in the morning to the sounds of chains hitting the floor. And it was always a nightmare of mine that the chains that I would hear these chains hitting the floor. And when I jumped out of bed and looked outside of the window, what it was a tow truck driver in my driveway repossessing my car for the second time in 8 months.
Whoa.
Right? And I run outside to go plead with him not to take the car, to act like he hadn't seen it. But of course, he had a job to do, so he took the car. I walked back in the house with my head in my hands, just thinking like, what, at this point in the business, I had been in business 5 years, and I was thinking to myself, what, it's been a good run, but obviously this is not what I'm meant to do. I can't keep money coming in consistently. Yes, I had been working with Keyshia Ka'oir, but it wasn't money that was coming in consistently. She was only one client. And ironically, in that moment that I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, I get a phone call from Keyshia. And for one reason or another, I decide to pick up the phone, and on the other end, Keyshia is ecstatic. And she's like, Jude, you won't believe it. You won't believe it. And I'm like, what happened, Keyshia? And she's like, I just got off the phone with my accountant and we just crossed over the 7-figure mark. We just crossed over $1 million.
Wow.
Now, this moment feels like it's not real. Like I pull the phone away from my ear and I look at it and I'm just like, this isn't happening. And for context, at the time, I had only gotten paid $3,000 for her documentary. Where Keyshia, in 1 year, 12 months, she had made $1 million from launching this business with a documentary, and she made $1 million. Now, I tell that story because it's important to tell that story because it wasn't just because we did the documentary series that Keyshia made $1 million. It's what she did with the documentary that helped her make $1 million. And it was really this long list of marketing strategies that she had come up with, that she was going to make sure every penny she spent on this documentary, every day that we filmed for 6 months, she was going to get a return on her investment. And so Keyshia, when she first launched it, she launched it through YouTube. But what she did was she shared it to everyone everywhere through multiple channels. And so she had a fan base of about 3,000 people on her email list. She sent it out to the email list. Anytime someone purchased a lipstick or a series or a package of lipsticks, in the email receipt was a link to watch the YouTube video. So even if you've never heard of her or you just happened to find her, never heard of her story, it was in the email that you got in the receipt. She texted to all her friends. She posted it on social media. At the time, she only used Twitter. She did radio and video interviews and make sure to mention the docuseries there. And then she found ways to ask her personal connections who had email lists to ask them to share it with their email list. But she found ways to share it multiple times over and over. So we did this docuseries in 2010. As late as 2017, she was still sharing part 3 of the docuseries on Facebook. Right?
That's some long legs to a marketing investment.
But it opened my eyes. So that day she called me and told me she made $1 million. It was also the day that I wanted to quit. But it opened my eyes to 2 things. One, I was obviously really good at what I was doing because she was able to make $1 million. But 2, how was she able to do that? And I went back and studied what we did from day 1 to the day that she launched this docuseries. And that is how over time I've come up with this list of 70 different things, because I realized the missing piece that I also had to help my clients with was the leverage part, helping them make sure to repurpose the video over and over and over and over again, so that they're not just, making money on it once or getting one client from it, but they're able to, for years, get multiple clients and continue to make a profit from a video that they've invested in years before.
I love it. So let me ask you a practical question. You're going to run through many of these ideas that we could use our video for, but as part of your services, maybe you give us a sheet with the list of 70, but you're not marketing. That's not part of your service. You create the documentary video series or video for a client, and that's it, right?
And that's it. It's up to the client
to do it.
To do the work, right? To do the work. But oftentimes the client has some of these things built in, right? Like, so for example, like I already talked about an email list, right? Like you already have an email list where you're emailing when there's new episodes, or you're emailing when you have a new event coming up or a webinar. So because you already have that foundation, it's really just giving you the strategy to say, okay, hey, you have this email list. Let's just say hypothetically it's 5,000 people on the email list. You have an email list. Instead of waiting until the docuseries is completed, let's start promoting the behind the scenes of this docuseries. Let's start promoting the day that we're setting up to do your interview. And let's take a picture of that and we share the behind the scenes so that your audience feels like they're a part of this process. They're not just seeing the finished product, but they're seeing the process as it's happening. That's actually one thing that Keyshia did in her docuseries. I have a screenshot of it on Twitter where she said, going over the edits for it was called Building the Brand, going over the edits for my Building the Brand docuseries, super dope. I just shed a tear, right? Like that gets people excited to know, like, hey, she's in it, but she's watching it over and she's crying watching it. Like, how powerful could that be, right? Like they're anticipating this series of videos coming out. It's things like that I often will recommend to the client, like, hey, there's again, yes, we're creating a docuseries that's going to come out much later, but here's how you get use of it before it even comes out. Right. Here's how you make sure that people are anticipated to watch it, and want to share it with others, because not only they're anticipated to watch it, they sit down and watch it, but now they're sharing it with others to watch it as well.
And this is a step back to the previous episode, but just for anyone listening who might not have heard that yet and has to go back, I just want to say that what you described, Jude, in that Keyshia, you know, using this video in all these ways and attributing that to the, you know, the dramatic growth of her company, it's because, which we talked about in the previous episode, that the video is very strategically created to connect a potential consumer with you as an interior designer, in that case Keyshia, as a makeup creator, with the passion and why you do it. So it's a very, you know, this isn't just like, hey, let me take a little video of me dancing to the latest TikTok thing, which right, is, they're funny, by the way. But, you know, like this is, we discussed, and I don't want to go through it again, but it kind of like is missed here if you don't get it. It's Jude's, his mission is for each of us to really tap into what makes us different and then express that. And then that way, by the time somebody watches it, they're really all on team whoever you are, or they're not. It's like, but if they are, they are. And that's right, the difference, right?
Yeah, that's the biggest difference. And that's what we literally spent 2 episodes talking about that.
Yes,
where,
yes.
You know, episode 1 and episode 2 was all about storytelling, because to your point, and it's a great point, it's an important point, I'm glad you brought it up. Without the story, even if you get to the leverage point, and I'm telling you all these different things that you could be doing, if you don't have the story, it's not going to resonate.
Right.
And what you want more than anything is to resonate with your audience, not to just show them, oh, here's a great thing that I can do. Or like you said, it's not just about dancing in front of a video, but who are you? Right. Can they find out who you are and connect with you on a deeper level and truly build a relationship with you, where it almost doesn't matter like what it is that you do. Like what you do is kind of a bonus to who you are. They want to get connected to who you are, and then what you do just comes later.
Okay. Yeah. Love it. Love it. So where do we go from here? Do we go into some of these ways that we could leverage this once we have it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I talked about what we could do beforehand. So let's talk about what could happen after the fact. So there could be the obvious is sharing it on social media, right? So sharing it on Facebook, Instagram. Now we have TikTok and Twitter and YouTube and all those things, right? But also the one thing I think people forget is resharing it on those platforms. So 6 months later, just because you think you shared it with your audience, that doesn't mean everyone has saw it. And beyond that, haven't we watched movies over and over? Like if it's a really good movie, haven't we gone back to watch it again? Right? So to me, it's always important to tell my client, hey, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months, and 12 months, let's already have a calendar set that it's getting ready to go out again, because you're going to get new people on your audience, in your audience or on your list. Let's make sure they've seen it. And even if they haven't seen it yet, they've been on your list. Here's a new time to send it to them again, right? And so that's another thing. When you're speaking on stage, that's an opportunity to create maybe a shorter version of the video, but create a intro that goes on right before you go on stage. So that, again, people are, yes, you're getting on stage to teach them something, but they're getting an opportunity to learn more about you right before you come on stage. It sets a different a standard, is a different scene for them right before you get on stage. YouTube ads campaign, running advertising campaigns. So these are all different things. Like I said, I won't go through the full 70, but the point is, why I call it dramatic leverage is because if we look at the root word lever, L-E-V-E-R, a lever is a tool that you use to help you physically lift something that you wouldn't be able to lift on your own. And this video series is helping you to connect with multiple people that you probably wouldn't be able to reach on your own, one person at a time. You're able to use the power of online and even sometimes offline media to connect with them, to allow them to learn more about who you are, And the point is that you want to make sure that if you're going to take the time to create this asset, this video asset, that you make sure you use it over and over and over again. And so that's the entire point of dramatic leverage.
Well, and it's funny because when you mention the playing again 3, 6, and 9 months later, I have to say I think that we need to be told that. I really do. I think that often we're like, well, I can't run that again. Like, we already did that. And yeah, I guess you're right. If you've got, 3,000 people following you, maybe 50 saw it before because of the algorithm. And maybe if you play it again in 3 months, half of those 50 will see it again. But that's the whole thing with the algorithms, right? Like I think we always forget that not everybody that's following us is getting the content that we're putting out there. And to think that it's a repeat is probably a little silly, right?
Right, absolutely. And to think that even if the person saw, let's say here's a great strategy for people listening. Let's say you're going after a client who may not have been prepared to work with you the year before, but they still have this project on the line, right? Let's say they're remodeling a home or they're remodeling a kitchen. Let's make it really small. They're remodeling a kitchen. Maybe it's not absolutely necessary for them to do it today, but let's say it's August 26th, 2022, and they're deciding, you know what, this might be the right time, but they don't know who to look for. They might have forgotten that you even talked to them a year ago. But if you send them an email saying, hey, it's been a year since we last talked. I wanted to reshare this video with you in case you hadn't had a chance to watch it. But I want to see if this is the right time for you to finish this, to actually get started on this kitchen project. Right? Like, just because you sent it already doesn't mean it's not an opportunity to send it again. And my point in saying that is that just because you think someone has seen it doesn't mean they were ready to work with you. Even if they saw it a year ago, they probably weren't ready to work with you yet. But seeing it again re-engages them and makes them think, oh, you know what? This is the right person for me to work with. I should talk to them. And to be honest, that's a strategy I've used in my own business. I had a client, Darnielle. It's a project I'm actually filming right now. We're on our second docuseries. But the very first time I met Darnielle was 2019. We did a road mapping session. No, 2018, actually. I met her in 2018. We did a road mapping session in 2019. We did not start working together until 2020, but it was because I wrote her an email that literally said 1 year later. And I reshared. I didn't reshare a video I had already sent her. I actually reshared her a project I had just finished. And I was saying, hey, why isn't it you in this seat? I want you to watch this docuseries, but as you watch this, I want you to think to yourself, why isn't it you in this seat? Why aren't you the person I'm interviewing on camera? And I have her testimony of her literally saying it was that email that convinced her that she was ready, but that email reminded her, like, I need to do this right now. And we have now been working together for 2 years, working on our second docuseries project. So again, there's all these different strategies, but the idea is for sure, like, the main point is repurposing it. Like, just because you think someone has seen it once doesn't mean that it's enough, right? Sometimes they need to see it over and over. Sometimes it's not the right time for them, but that's why you reshare it and you make the most of the content that you've created.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny because I know your medium is film, but that works for photography as well, right? I'm thinking about an interior designer that has a great project that's been photographed, and that 1 year later subject line is pretty powerful. And to say, you know what, in this year's time, this is a project I've completed, and why doesn't your living room look like this, crazy lady? Right? Like, no, that's inside voice, Jude. No, but that's pretty. It's what I like is it's not aggressive, and it's not intrusive, and most people will enjoy whether it's a well-made video or well-photographed room. They'll have a moment of that was nice to see, and if you hit them at the right moment when they're open to it, like Darnielle was, then boom, they might hire you, right?
Right, yeah. And that's the thing is, businesses, the reason you mentioned that we need to be reminded of this, the reason that is because business is hard, right? Like, there's nothing easy about building a business. But sometimes it's the simple things that we're not thinking of I often like to say it like this. We have gold in our hands, but we're searching for silver. Gold actually costs more than silver. And so we have this gold, we have this thing that's so valuable that's already in our hands, but we want to create something new and
Mm,
shiny. And
mm,
it's like, no, you don't need anything new and shiny. You already have everything that you need. If you've taken the time to create this asset, if you've taken the time to dig deep into your story, and then you've created the video that tells and shows your story, you already have the assets. Now it's just making sure to repurpose that, to reuse it. Literally, you could wake up every day and say, okay, what's a new thing? How can I reshare this in a new way today? Right?
mm.
That's 300. I've only come up with 70, but there might be 300 different ways that you could reshare it, right? But it's only just literally waking up every morning and saying, okay, how can I share this again? Even if it's one person a day,
Mm.
how can I share this again? When I started this business, I started in 2006, but in 2009, 2010, one of the strategies that I did use is a one a day strategy. And I said to myself, you know what? There's not enough people that know that I exist. Let me find every single day, let me find one new person to email to let them know that I exist. And here's my portfolio, and I would like to work with them. Now,
Mm.
doesn't mean that I did it for 2 years. It doesn't mean that, 600 people wanted to work with me. But what ended up happening was that there were a few that became clients, but there were others who weren't ready to become clients, but they referred me to someone else. But that's only because I went out of my way to make sure that they knew I existed, right? And so, again, that's another strategy, a one a day strategy. And it sounds almost elementary, right? Like it almost sounds too easy, but these are the things that creates the leverage, it creates the snowball effect that allows that you get to a point where people know you exist. They're referring you to other people without you having to do the work, but it takes the leverage, it takes the first initial work for that to happen.
Well, I would have to say that, you know, probably 70, 80% of the things that we can do to create business for us, whether we are just starting out or re-energizing an existing business, are simple. Go back to the basics, silly, do it. You know
Yep.
what I mean? Like, and
Yep.
and the thing is, people do tend to say, "Oh, I'm not going to do that." You know what I mean? That's like
Mm-hmm.
that's never going to work. I mean, the listeners have heard me say 1,000 times how when I started in Window Works, I went for my morning, 3 to 5 mile jog, depending on the day, putting door knockers on people's houses. I would
Yeah.
figured if I it was like I'm going to get up and run. And then what? I'm going to sit at a desk and wait for business? Why don't I run the neighborhoods and put my
Right.
information on their doorknobs? And the thing about it is I did it every day for months. And Vin and I always talked about it. If I put out, for every 25 I put out, we were hoping for one phone call.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
and the thing is, it wasn't every 25 put out one sale. It was one phone call. Then
Right. Yeah.
now you've got, 3 phone calls coming in a day and you're trying to convert 2 out of 3 to an appointment. And then
Mm-hmm.
you're going on 2 appointments and you're trying to convert 1 out of 2 to a sale. And so, what happens is over the course of my, career, I've had people say, so if you do the numbers on that, you're putting like out 1,000, door knockers and you're ultimately ending up with like 5 sales. I'm like, right, but I would have got none if I sat at my desk.
Right.
And
Right.
those 5 sales, to your point, many from that initial 6, 7 months of jogging and door knocking are customers today. I mean, I can trace them back to that. They still are working with Window Works. And to your point, also the person picks the door knocker up and they don't need it, but maybe they have lunch that day with a friend who does. And
Mm-hmm.
so you're saying to basically take the door knocker approach to the videos, like spread them
Yeah.
everywhere,
Yep.
right?
Yep. That's exactly what I'm saying. I think, another approach to it is because you mentioned that the people that were in your that became clients early in the day for you, like when you were knocking on these doors. I think the other thing that clients often forget, or people often forget, is going back to those clients,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when you re-engage them, like I've had a client who I re-engaged 5 years later, and he was ready to do another project 5 years later, right? And I
Mm.
think to your point, like even if you go back and let's say hypothetically you asked, maybe you didn't get a testimonial the first time, but you go back and you say, hey, you know what, we worked on a really great project together and I didn't get a testimonial, but I'd like to get one now. And you'd be surprised that that testimonial or that re-engagement opens the door for them to either refer you to someone else or for them to be re-engaged on a different project. But it is that groundwork. If you had not knocked on the doors while you were already running, while you were already outside, if you
Let's
had
just
not done
multitask
that,
this, right?
yeah, but that's that leverage. That's that momentum that you created. You did the work years ago, but now it's repeated itself. It's from this one time that you went out to do it. And it's the same thing with videos. If you create the video once, or you create a video series once, and you just repurpose it over and over, it allows you to re-engage with past clients. It allows you to re-engage with new clients. Like, it's a cycle. And that is why, again, I call it dramatic leverage, because you're truly leveraging these assets that you've created over and over, instead of having to, what I call the marketing, what is it? When a rat is on a flywheel? Is that what it's called?
The hamster wheel?
The hamster wheel.
Right.
Instead of being on the hamster wheel of always having to create new content, just take a year off, take the content that you've already created, the stories, that make sure there's stories around them. That is the most important piece. Make sure there are stories, and repurpose those stories so that you're able to continue to build your business and continue to do the work that you've been called to do. Like, LuAnn is helping you build the business. I am just here to talk about the marketing end and talk about how you could share your story and make sure to market your story at the same time.
And let me ask you a question. When somebody like Darnell goes on to do the second video series, I mean, so what happens now? Is it always in your mind that the first story should be your story, right? That why, like you said, the clarity on who you are, what your mission and vision is in this world, and that's what's going to connect with another human being to encourage them to understand and connect with you and want to work with you, right? So when you go to work with Darnell the second time, she doesn't have a new mission vision. So now do you get further? What do? You get further into, if it was an interior designer, now maybe the first video or the first series is that kind of the arc that you outlined for me in the previous episode. So a designer maybe duplicates that arc in their business and what's true and authentic to them. But is the next step then maybe the process of a project, or how do we look at the next step?
Yeah, I'll give you the behind the scenes of Darnell's, and then I'll relate it to interior design. So when I first met Darnell, we worked together. We did a road mapping session. I mentioned that she didn't work with me for a year, but what she took out of that road mapping session, there was an idea that I gave her, and it was about, she had over 200 testimonials. She's a business coach. Darnell is a business coach out of Delaware, and very successful, over 200 testimonials. But what I said to her is the testimonials weren't deep enough. And I said, why aren't you going deeper with your clients to ask them how you've transformed their lives? It wasn't just about building a bigger business and making more money. You were transforming their lives. There were a few women who talked about being able to pay for their wedding or pay for a family trip cash, right? And I said, what if you went back and interviewed those clients and went deeper into their stories? And so she did that. The year that we didn't work together, she actually did that. She interviewed 10 clients on a Zoom call, ended up writing up 10 different case studies, and then emailed that to her list. It helped her bring on an extra $100,000 worth of clients.
Whoa.
So that was before we ever started working together. Now, again, this is just the testament to the power of story, because all she did was literally go back and ask them for their story. She spent, I think, 15 minutes on a call with them. They told their story. She posted that through video, obviously, and then made money from it. But when we did the first docuseries was about her personal brand, herself. So it was going back into her story, how she got started in the business, why she was passionate about starting this business, her family background, because there's a story around that as well. And in her current life, she is in her 40s, but just now becoming a mother, or on the journey of becoming a mother. And she is having a hard time she's having infertility issues. And we tell that story and how it relates to business. So that's the first docuseries, and it's called Next Level Everything. The second docuseries that we're working on now, And there's a reason why I wanted to go through this, because I'm gonna show you the leverage part of this. The second docuseries that we're working on now is called Move to Millions. And so she's gotten to her business to millions of dollars, but now she's helping her clients, and she always has done this, but we're putting a spotlight on it. She's helping her clients move to millions. So getting their business from 6 figures to 7 figures. And what we're doing differently is, instead of just talking about her story and how she's getting to millions, we're doing these 4 case studies, 4 different clients on different parts of this move to millions. So they're 4 case studies in their stories and showing how their stories intertwines with her story, right? But the reason, like I said, I wanted to share those 3 parts is because if you think about what we're doing in this docuseries, it's just a bigger project or a longer extension of the very first idea, which is the case studies that she had already done on her own. This time we're going into these clients' homes to film them with their families, because we film a few that are having dinner with their families, but we're showing the bigger idea that there's a legacy play along with building a good business, a business that gets to millions of dollars, right? And so how you do that with an interior designer is same thing. I think an interior designer who already has clients, who's been in business, let's say hypothetically 5 years, I would say the first thing is to make sure you're capturing your stories. Even if it's not on video, you're capturing the stories of your clients in some way, even if it's written form. And then we would create a personal brand docuseries that's all about, like, why did you get into this? Who are you? What makes you special? What makes you different? And then, yes, digging deeper into projects. So let's see a project from beginning to end. Let's see how you transform this kitchen from a old school 1960s kitchen to a, more modern 2020, 21 kitchen. What does that look like? What's the process that you go through? And how does this remodel help change the way your client lives their life? Because it's not just about remodeling a kitchen, but what happens there, like what food gets cooked in the kitchen, and what does it mean to the family that's being built, that's being raised in this home. So that is the route that I would take with going from project to project. It's more about, like, how do we continue? It's a journey, it's a transformation, and how do we continue this transformation over time?
And that's the money line right there, is finding out how the new kitchen, the new bathroom, the newly redesigned living room affects and transforms the lives of the clients, right? So yes, often we can focus, when we look at and think about our marketing, we just focus on the actual beautiful result. And what you're saying is to connect to the story of the transformation of what that room became. And the thing is, designers know this. I mean, they are working just like Darnell, sounds like as a business coach, you said she was, right? She's knee deep into people's lives. So, and I love that. She's just like us. We take the surface level testimonial. Oh, Sally Smith was great. My living room is beautiful now. Yay. Right. And maybe there's 3 more lines with it, but to the big message that I keep hearing from you is it's the story that makes, the connection. And when we've spent those 6 weeks, 6 months, year and a half with that client, redoing the kitchen, find the moments in there that are the, oh my goodness, goosebumps moment that the client has throughout the experience, right?
Yeah. It is I think the easiest way to think about it is to, what I like to say, think bigger and go deeper. It's not, yes, you're creating, what you're doing is what you love, and you're remodeling a home, or you're doing interior design in a home. But there's what happens after? Like, how does life change after? And that's where you're thinking bigger. And it does take asking your client the question of, like, okay, what does this mean to you? If we were able to finish this project, like, what would make you happy to see this kitchen, this bedroom, this bathroom in a different light? Like, how would it change your environment? How would it change the way that you feel every time you walk into this home after work? That is the deeper questions you need to ask in order to get the stories to tell. I've seen it done before with real estate agents, where if they're selling a home, they don't sell the home just based off of, oh, this is a nice home in a great neighborhood. They'll tell you, and sometimes it's a fake story, but it still sells the idea of what it could be like to live in this home. Right. And I think, yes, if you think bigger about, this is not just a transaction. This is a transformation. If you think bigger in that way, that this is a transformation, and you go deeper into finding out the story of that transformation, that is where the magic happens. And that is where you can continue to grow your business and to be able to do the work that you love. Doing the work that we love is important to us, but how you go about doing it, how you go about attracting more clients that you love to work with, it's about thinking bigger and going deeper into the transformation.
And this question and this encouraging a client to do this imagination, I mean, you alluded to it there. It's helpful in the discovery. If you're on your initial consultation, I love it as a question afterwards for creating the testimonial and really understanding at a deeper level what it is that your work, how it affects somebody. But even I'm imagining if I'm there and I'm walking through a home with a client and it's a potentially a potential client and they're describing what they want the living room to be like or this or that, the other thing, to say the question, tell me when you visualize this room exactly the way it is in your mind's eye, what happens when you come home at the end of the day? What is it? Why do you want it like this? And, from a sales standpoint, now you have tapped into somebody right now, right?
Yeah,
You have, you have literally tapped into them because I can see if somebody were to answer, if I were to ask somebody that and they were to answer me surface, right? Oh, I mean, I just want to, come home and have a nice new house. I mean, this thing, look at it. It's like, no, but tell me, describe it to me, because when I think about designing for you, I want to deliver on the vision that you've got. So tell me about that feeling. And I could just imagine from I'm going to say from a sales standpoint, because the best sale, I always say, is the win-win. I figure out what you need to be happy and I figure it out and I deliver it. And so, if somebody tells you in the beginning their dream imagination, reaction when they come in the house, now you have, your word, the roadmap to get there, right?
Right. Yeah. You have the roadmap to get there, and you can remind them about it on the journey to the finish line. Right. Right. Because sometimes it does get frustrating, I guess. Like if it's a long project, if it's like, let's say it's a year to complete this, it does, when you're dealing with all the small little details for the client, for them, it gets frustrating or it feels long. But if you remind them, hey, when we finish this, this is what it's going to look like. And this is what's going to happen when you get to walk into this home. You re-center them to their own vision. Right. And that to me is powerful. That is powerful. And that, it's just, that is the power of storytelling, though, because they've told you this story and now all you're doing is reminding them of the same story they've told you.
And the thing is, the story, if we don't take the time to ask the right questions, then we might miss the story. We might miss it ourselves in just being excited about the transformation in the beauty that we're going to deliver, right? But maybe somebody's simple story is, I want to come home and have a place to read where, I've had houses where the seat that ended up being my seat, there's no good reading light by it. And I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. We had to move this whole living room around. You know what I mean? You don't, and it just could be something as, what? There's no really cozy, great place for me to read. Or in my case, there was no great place for me to read while the Vin Man watched baseball because we wanted to be together, but I couldn't read in the darn room and I don't want to watch baseball. So it could be something simple like that. But if I, even if I tell it to you thinking, well, this is a funny thing to really look forward to, but this is what I look forward to. Or it could be a big, big thing. I've been a foodie and I've always dreamt of having a kitchen with all the latest gadgets and blah, 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 whatever it is, right? Little or big. But, from the standpoint of to your point, when you know someone's story, you are now more connected to them, right? And you can consistently recenter yourself as you're working with them throughout and making sure that you are servicing them and honoring them and the reason that they hired you. I mean, it's a two-way street.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a two-way street, and it's the way to, I've always, when I first got in business, I always heard the term like build a relationship with your clients. And I got to say, it wasn't the easiest thing for me to do. I didn't understand, because the way I think about building a friendship with, the friends I have in my life, I don't know that I would do it the same way with my clients. But if you ask the questions that go deeper into really understanding what motivates them, like you're talking about wanting to spend time with your husband while he's watching baseball, you want to read a book, right? Like that to me just gives me a different picture of what you would want to happen when I finish this living room. If I were designing the living room, like that's a different picture. I get a different understanding of why it's important, right? But now we can have that conversation. In the last episode, I talked about Janie and JP, who were a husband and wife interior design firm. And I remember seeing a video of their client talking about like that was important to them, that they had because they had a couple that was doing their home, like they felt understood. Right. And so, yeah, I think when we think about that, when we think about building a relationship with our clients, a long-term relationship, it's about these little things, asking the right questions that help us go deeper. And then once we're able to go deeper, we're now able to leverage these stories into long-term, lifelong relationships.
I love it. So hit us with a couple of more of this list of 70 before I let you go.
Yeah. So, so we talked about email, we talked about social media. I think others would be trying to think of what other projects that I've done. So I talked about William Molesky in episode 1, who's an interior designer. And that was a great strategy where when someone reached out to him to set up a discovery meeting, he would do discovery meetings in person. And when someone would set up a discovery meeting, what he would do immediately after he got off the phone with that person is send them the first video in the series. And this is email. So he'd send them an email with the first video in the series. He'd meet with them for, let's say, about 30 minutes in person. And then after that meeting, he would send a second video in the series. And so each time you're engaging with this person, you're sending them a new video. You'd engage with them in person, but then you'd send them a new video afterward. That's another way to keep them like engaged and wanting to work with you, because there is a sales process. It's not just the person calls you and then they want to hire you and that's it. Like they want to get a feel for who you are and what you're about. And that's where having multiple videos, having a series will also take them on a journey. So that's going back to email, but it's a different type of email series that you could send out.
And let me ask you a question. So when you create a 3-part series like you did for William and the others, when I only get the first part, does it feel like it's done and I've learned what I was supposed to learn? Or I'm like, I'm sorry, William, send me part 2.
It's a little bit of both. So it stands alone where it feels like you've learned what you needed to learn, but it does allude to the fact that there's a second part coming. And so, yes, what would happen sometimes is clients would ask, hey, why not just send me all 3 parts? Because we would allude to the fact that it's a 3-part series. We want to show you part 1. Why not send me all 3 parts so I could watch all 3? I've had clients do that because I do the same thing in my business. I have a 3-part video series right before I'm getting ready to work with a client through road mapping. And I've had 2 clients actually just say to me, hey, just send me all 3 parts because this is exciting. Like I'm really excited.
I don't want to wait.
Just send me all 3 parts. Yeah. And so yeah, it is. And again, that is, I think, if we think about like the way we watch Netflix shows, like we finish a show, the show is resolved. In some ways it's resolved, the story is resolved, but then you want to watch the next episode. It's the binging effect.
Right.
That is the same psychological thing that I'm creating. It's stories, but it's stories that continue on over time that I'm creating in the docuseries that I do for my clients.
And it occurs to me, Jude, that another way to optimize and leverage the investment and the time that you put into creating a video series for your business would be I feel like once you've done this deep work and you've done this road mapping and asked yourself the questions and all of that, I feel like there's an opportunity for blog writing with it. And that could be on the website, and that could be SEO. And it also, because, and again, we do always say that some consumers like to watch a video, some consumers like to read about it. So, and even if we're not a fabulous writer, we can reach out to somebody and say, here's the video. Would you make it into a blog post or something, right? Have you found people do that successfully as well?
Yeah, I've had people write blog posts, but I've also seen them redo their entire website because the messaging has changed. Because they've gone through the deep work, they have created the videos. William Molesky was actually the first client that did that, where I gave him the video series, we finished the project, and he looked at it and he was just like, this doesn't match what's on my website. Meaning it was so good, and it was finally the messaging he wanted to put out there that he now needed to update his website to match it. And so Darnielle is in the process of doing the same thing herself right now. And so, yeah, I think there's blog posts, but there's also social media story, like the stories. Even though you may not tell the stories through video, you could write the stories out through a caption with a picture, right? Because we talked about that too, that this can be done in pictures. But again, the point is that you're telling stories. And if you tell stories, then that is what connects. And you're just bringing imagery to it. The imagery can be photos, but it could also be video. I happen to think, I'm a bit biased, but I happen to think that videos are much more powerful, but the same thing can happen through pictures as well.
Well, and as evidenced by the crazy things like TikTok, of course, videos are the end all be all.
Right. Other ways could be one-on-one presentation. If you are sitting with someone in the room, and let's say you sent them the video, but you're not sure if they've had a chance to watch it, or you just ask them plainly, hey, I sent you a video before we met. Have you had a chance to watch it? Just watch it with them in the room, right? Again, these are small things that I think people don't think about, like, oh, that's too much. I've had it before where right before a road mapping session, I've asked the question, hey, did you watch the videos I sent? They didn't watch it. Well, let's take the time to do it now. Because it's important that the stories create a frame, and we talked about this in episode 1, but the stories create a frame of reference that changes the way the conversation that you're getting ready to have, the way it goes. And so making sure that this person watches the video series, or even just resharing the story in front of them, that's another way to do it. Like having in person when you're with them one-on-one. You mentioned blogs, but also even if you do a guest blog post, like I have been writing for window fashion. You have as well, but I think even then, like if you write out the blog or write out the article for the magazine, but then link to where the video actually lives, that's another way to reshare the video as well.
That's nice, right? So you take the time to create this, and if you have the opportunity to write about it somewhere, you write about that you have the video, and then you stick the link in. Or reference it. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's funny because I love that you said that the stories of the video, create the framework for the conversation you're going to have. And I can see that. It's like if I want you to know what there is to know about me, so that it's almost like that we skip the first date. It's like you really, right? You kind of get my whole thing. You get my, like you said, my mission vision. It's not like you just, get my dance moves. You get me. And then when I'm talking, it's almost like, it reminds me of how we have the bio. We have the introduction of the guest on the show. And, if you've not been on my show, you don't know that the guest doesn't hear this bio. We write this afterwards based on the content of the show. And often I will say to the guest, look, you have a master's in architecture, you have this, or you did this project. They're going to know it. Just talk about it like they know it. The really, like if you're an AD 100, you're an El Decor A-lister, you can just assume we know it about you. And that reminds me of that. If I've had the opportunity to see the video about somebody, then I'm on the same page where they want to start the conversation and move me through their business, right?
Right. Yeah. And it's just, when we talk about building a relationship, it's a different way to go about that conversation, so that we're not it's not awkward.
Right.
It's not awkward. The person sits with you and they feel like they already know you. And now that it's a new way to have this relationship. I remember on episode 1, I told the story of how I got started in business, which is my teacher, Mrs. Donnelly, handed me my first set of business cards. And that's literally how I got started in business, right? And I remember your reaction to that, but it changed the conversation we continued to have afterward, right? And so all of this 4-part series, if you really, and I know it's a lot to listen through 4 hours, but if you really listen, you go back and you study this 4-part series, what you'll realize is the conversations we're having is proof of everything that we're talking about. It's proof that stories work. It is not optional to be in business and not tell your story. In 2021, 2022, it is mandatory to learn how to tell stories in business, because if you're going to continue to grow and if you're going to continue to attract the right kind of clients, you have to be sharing stories over and over. And this 4-part series is a testament of that. Like it's titled Dramatic Demonstration of Proof, or How to Tell Your Story, but it's really all about that. It's all about storytelling and bringing your stories to life.
Well, and you know what I want to say as a little cap off to all of this, Jude, is that essentially this is one of the probably most powerful tools that we have at our disposal to differentiate ourselves from the commodity driven interior design industry. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's many designers that think that they're struggling competing with the race to the bottom, with the Wayfairs and the Amazons and everybody selling product online. And what happens is the message is consistently, we're not selling commodity, we're selling ourselves. We're selling your unique viewpoint on this space. And this is a very, very powerful tool for combating the thought process that somebody can get a beautiful room designed by going online and clicking stuff, right? It's like it's separating us from like I said, the commodity driven industry that is happening now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's separating yourself from being a commodity, but also showing, like we talked about, showing what makes you different, showing why it's important to work with you. Like there are plenty of people that still want the hands-on approach. They don't want to do it themselves. They don't want to go on Amazon or go on, like you said, Wayfair or something like that. They want the person that's going to guide them through this process. They just want to make sure you're the right person. In the last episode, I gave the question, why should I do business with you? Why should I choose you versus any and every other option available? This is the answer to that question, that you are telling your story. You're showing them why you're different. And that showing why you're different isn't just about talking about what you do. It's about who you are. It's the small things that talk about who you are. And I'm hoping that after these 4 episodes, or how many ever episodes you've listened to, that's the one thing you take away is, who am I? How do I continue to share that story over and over again?
Right. I love it.
Yep.
Well, I mean, can we do more? I can't. I don't want it to end.
I'm sure. I'm sure we
have
can.
to figure out another way.
Yeah. The one thing I'll leave you with, because I did mention in the last episode, there will be giveaways. It'll be in the show notes.
Oh, goody. Okay. And how we get that on our show is we just go to LuAnnNigara.com/goodies. And so if you have already signed up for goodies, what that means is after you listen to the show, a new goodie will be uploaded. And if you've never signed up for goodies, then you go there and you sign up and you get all the goodies that exist, and you get Jude's goodie as well.
Yes. And so I'll make sure that LuAnn has that for you guys. And again, just more than anything, be vulnerable, be willing to share your story, get personal, and continue to grow your business, continue to do the work that you love to do every single day.
I love it. Thank you, Jude, so much for sharing all of this with us. It's been an amazing and special gift for me personally, and I'm sure for many of our listeners as well. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
So which tactics do you think you could use to spread the word about your business and close more deals? Which do you think would help you turn more lookers into buyers? Jude has 70 ideas for sharing video with the world, and I'm sure there's more. I can tell you, I've started to notice how others are using video to enhance their brand, tell their story, and get the right people in the front door. We've all started to notice video ads on social, how they're used on websites that you're buying from, and how individual video moments are sliced and diced and repurposed again and again. Video can be a magical marketing tool, but not if it stays in a file on our computer or buried on YouTube. Am I right? I think a lot of us can admit to putting time and money into some amazing marketing collateral and then faltering a bit when it comes to figuring out how to put it to work for us, right? I'm just going to say, I don't know who else does that. As Jude grew more experienced in his business, he began to realize this common struggle. He saw that it wasn't enough to give his clients great video. He also had to show them ideas for how they could use their completed video to their advantage. All right. This is genius. I love that he does this. All right. And I would just have to say, total admiration, because he didn't have to show lipstick maven Keyshia Ka'oir anything, though. She was set on making that initial $3,000 investment work for her. She spliced it, she diced it, and she put it out there in any and every way she could think of. That's a high five to her, right? Many of us aren't naturals at this, though. So that's where Jude's video distribution advice is so helpful, all right? The thing we have to remember is that there are a limited number of channels to distribute video in: social, email, and website. The magic is in how you package the whole video or split the video into clips and use them in a relevant and engaging way within these platforms. You don't always have to use the full video. A key 30-second slice of the video can add punch, depth, and authenticity to something you're talking about, maybe today on Instagram, right? Let's run through some of the distribution ideas that Jude shared with us today. 1, email it to your existing clients and prospects as an email drip campaign. Another, add it as a link to emails you send, whether it's cold emails or replies to inquiries. Another, if your customers can purchase something from your website, include a link to the video in the emailed ordered confirmation. Right? Another, craft "It's been a year" email and send it to your existing clients. Create a "This Could Be You" campaign to send to prospects you haven't closed yet. Use it as part of your intro when speaking. After a discovery phone meeting, email the prospect the first video in a series. Before the in-person meeting, send them a second video. Link to it when relevant throughout your blogs and web copy. Bottom line, you've got a great story, and you're the only one who has that story. Get your story out there. Use it to help demonstrate who you are, how you operate, and why someone should work with you. It elevates your brand, your business, and it really does go a long way to preventing people from shopping you. Because you know what? You are the only you. So, I just want to say, if you didn't get it the last time that Jude was on the show, now is the time to get his book. Go to judecharles.co/DDP book 3. All right? The link will be in the show notes. Get out there, share your story, and decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.